Anita Adams and I are on a similar mission to raise the collective consciousness by guiding people to really tune in to their soul for guidance so that they can create a life of meaning, well being, and joy. And as my special guest here today on Awaken and Ascend, Anita will share how nature is a portal to yourself. Super excited. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm your host, Jennifer Regular, and delighted that you are here with Anita Adams and I, who is joining us actually from BC, where I also live. So I cannot agree with you more, Anita, that nature is a portal to the self. And before we get into that, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what lit your path to becoming a spiritual entrepreneur and an award-winning leader, in fact.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. It's so great to see your beautiful shining face and to connect with you. I feel like you're a soul sister as we traverse this journey to our highest selves, and hopefully are guiding the way for a number of other people as well. So this is great. My spiritual journey, I've been on a spiritual path for a long time, but it really got lit up in 2020, as I think it had for a lot of people. It was a transformative year, wasn't it? You know, the pandemic and the transformation that imposed, I think, on a lot of people. And my transformation and day of the darkness, because I slipped into this really dark, scary place during the early stage of the pandemic. Not only just because of what was going on in the world, but how the pandemic had really hit my business in a hard way. I was the founder and executive director of a national arts organization that promoted Canadian film. And I had run that for almost 2 decades, 18 years. And it was a big piece of who I considered I was. It was my identity. And suddenly overnight, all of my funders and sponsors and partners pulled out, and because of the pandemic and everything shutting down. And I was going deeper and deeper into debt. I had a staff across the country that I felt deeply responsible for. And like I already said, I just felt like my identity was so tied up in this business, and suddenly I was losing it. And who am I without this business? Who am I? And what am I going to possibly do? And I was scared. I've never been so scared in my life. And I brought this question, what am I supposed to do, to my business coach? And she asked me one simple question. Well, Anita, what do you typically do when you're stressed? And I said, well, I usually go for a walk in the forest. She's like, perfect. This is what you're going to do every day for the next 30 days. You are going to go for a walk in the woods. I'm like, what? No, I can't do that. Who has time to do that? You know, and I'm thinking in my head, what kind of business coach tells her client to go for a walk in nature? I need business advice, not nature therapy. But somehow she got a commitment out of me. And every day at the crack of dawn, because that was the only time I figured I could make this work, was to get up and go early before my work day started. And I would march down into, it was called Mosquito Creek Park, which was just behind my house, and a creek that ran along the Trans-Canada Highway, just below the Trans-Canada Highway. And it was just me and the squirrels and, you know, the occasional coyote, because nobody else was out in the woods at this time. And I'd march down there, and I demanded of God and the universe that same question: what am I supposed to do? And this was my mantra every day. It's, you know, marching down, and I was angry and uptight and anxiety ridden. Slowly, though, over time, that anxiety started to melt away, and I started to really connect with my environment. And I was noticing how the light was coming in through the trees, and how the wind was tousling my hair and the warmth of the sun on my face and the sounds of the birds chattering in the woods and even the smells of the heather blossoms on the bushes. And I was connecting with this environment in a really deep present way. And in that presence, I started to feel calmer and happier. Not exactly happy, but just happier. And I began to ask that question again. What am I supposed to do? And in this space of calmness and connection and presence, I got an answer. And the answer was, what do you want to do? And it was my voice, but it was like I was talking to, I don't know, a older, wiser, future version of me. And I didn't miss a beat. I'm like, what do you mean? What do I want to do? Tell me what I'm supposed to do. No, Anita. The question is, what do you want to do? I don't know. I don't know. And the response came, yes, you do. Well, that stumped me. That stumped me. And I marched back home, and I couldn't shake this, like, again, it's not like I've never talked to myself before, but this really truly was something different. And I found myself later that day at the bookstore in the spirituality section at the back, clearly still looking for answers. And this one book caught my eye, and it was Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. I pull it off the shelf, I flip it open, and this one sentence literally leapt off the page, and it said, frustration and anxiety come from not listening to the soul. Frustration and anxiety come from not listening to the soul. And I knew I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening. And I've been there before. 15 years previously, my husband and I went through a really, really hard time. And I got disconnected to that higher self at that time, that soul voice, and just about destroyed my marriage as a result. And thankfully, I came back. I got back on track. My husband got back on track. We both went inward and started to connect with that part of ourselves and moved through that dark time and back into the light. And I knew I can do that again. I knew that I needed to reconnect with that part of myself that really understood who I am, what I want, and why it matters. And so I went back into the forest every day again. Now this is about 3 weeks into the challenge that my business coach gave me. And now I'm on a mission to figure out how to really connect consistently with that part of myself that has the answers. And every day I was asking, so what do I want? What do I want? I was really leaning in and listening. And I heard the crickets. I heard the breeze. I heard the creek trickling. And I was frustrated, truthfully, at the beginning of that journey, because I was so determined to figure this out. And I knew I was onto something. I knew there was truth to what I was doing, but I hadn't figured out the secret of how to really connect until I did. And one day I did. And that was, I realized, I reflected back to, well, what was really working that day that I heard, I knew that I had the answers. And I realized it was that presence in being really connected with my environment, with nature. And so I've developed, it's a really simple little process that it's a 5-step process to connecting with your higher self, with your inner wisdom. Can I share that with you now? Okay, by the way, you're on mute. But I get
Thank
the
you.
nodding head, and yes.
There's a glare on my screen, and I thought I hit the button, but obviously I didn't. Yeah, let's
Awesome.
go through that process. I'd love to hear about that, Anita.
Yeah. So the first thing is really just unplugging from your busy life and stepping into nature. So getting away from the computers and the cell phones and even, like, take the earbuds out and be outside and unplugged. So that's step number one. The second step is to speak your gratitude. That was a practice that I just started getting into when I was walking in nature. I started to feel thankful for the for my business partner for sending me outside, and then that expanded. So expressing your gratitude helps to really connect you with the here and now, and it raises your vibration, right? And this is what you want to get into a higher vibrational frequency after you take a few minutes to express your gratitude. And by the way, don't do it like you're trying to get race through 10 push-ups.
Yeah.
Like really take your time to feel the gratitude for the different things. And I go from the littlest things, like the comfort of your hiking boots that you're in, to the beautiful relationships you have. Like there's so much to be grateful for. And the third thing is to then connect with your environment using all of your senses. So, what do you see, hear, smell, feel, taste, even? Get really present with using all of your senses to connect you. And sometimes I've got a lot of noise going on in my head and I'm having a hard time connecting, the area that I live in, pine trees are very common, and I would just break off a few little pine needles, smush them through my fingers, and then inhale, and that fragrance would just deeply drop me into my body. So what is it in your environment that can help you really connect to the here and now? Because it's the presence that is so important. And then the fourth thing is to ask your question. And what I always recommend that you start with is, what do I want? What do I really want? And we're not going to get into this now because I don't think we have time, but I've had people ask me, well, that sounds like this selfish thing to be focusing on about what you want. And it's not. It's not. We are so driven by or influenced by what everybody else wants for us in this world, including our media is dictating to us who we are and who we should be. So this is an opportunity to shut that out and really go inward and focus on the me. What is it important to me? What do I want? It's not selfishness. This is clarity. It's finding clarity about who I am and what's important to me. And then the final thing is simply to listen, but to listen without judgment. And this is so important. And it takes skill to do that. And it's a skill anybody can learn over time. Listening to your inner wisdom without judgment. Because when your soul voice speaks to you, it's going to speak to you of your potential. It's going to speak to you of your greatness. And that can be intimidated. It can be, you will hear things. Eventually, as you continue to listen more and more, you will hear things that will push you out of your comfort zone, and you will be tempted to say, who am I to do that? And this is it takes courage to lean in and listen to that inner voice of wisdom. But when you do, wow, wow, all sorts of amazing things will unfold for your life. There you go.
Wow.
My 5 steps to connecting to your higher self. And for me, nature is key. It is that sacred portal to your higher self because it helps you unplug and disconnect from the noise that is around you, and the endorphins that flood your body while being in nature help to raise your vibration. And that's so important. That's when you get to that state of a higher vibrational frequency, that's when you can really tune in. And that's why nature and speaking your gratitude and unplugging from all the other things serves you to reach that point of higher vibrational frequency.
Ah, thank you so much, Anita. That's really amazing. I love that process. And I really tuned into a lot of what you said and saw the similarities in something that I had gone through as well. But also this idea of selfishness.
Mm.
I think it's more about self-responsibility and self-care. And I think it's really important point that you brought up around that. And also how nature is a portal to ourself. In British Columbia, we have the privilege of being surrounded by mountains, the ocean, and the forest. And I agree with you. The forest is my place too. I love being able to walk through the forest and just find it's so grounding and where I go to really soothe my senses. as
Hmm.
well, and just put everything back in order to become realigned. And I too went into a very different space, a different kind of portal during the lockdown. I was a live-in caregiver at the time and became really burnt out by the
Mm.
end of those couple of years, at the first couple of years anyway. And I wasn't feeling inspired at all. I didn't have a vision for my life. I was in the process of leaving that position and pursuing something else. And I didn't know what it was going to be yet. I was just wanting to sleep. I just needed a little bit of rest and not feeling inspired. But I went out, for the walk, and I was in the elements of the sun, and I'm
Mm.
starting to pick up the sounds of the ocean again. And I started noticing different things around me, like whimsical statues that people had in their yard, the colors of the flower, the colors of nature around me, and the different sounds, and just opening up to that sensory experience again. And I started journaling for 30 days, about my daily delights. And
I
those
love that.
daily delights, yeah, started helping me to feel the rhythm and actually build the momentum of feeling inspired again, for my soul to reawaken and to realign myself with what was meaningful and important, and really reawaken the wonder of life again, and being in awe of that, of all of creation and what's available there. And then doing that really tuned me into my own creative capacity of creating the kind of life that I wanted. So I really resonate with the idea of nature being a portal to ourselves, to bring us back home to ourselves, to return and to reemerge,
Mm,
in a new way, kind of go through a rebirth, which I think is what the portal really is, is a rite of passage into the cycle of rebirth, the
I love
death of the old ways of doing and being into these new ways, which we saw individually, collectively, and the world as a whole as well. And then for you to be able to go through that and break it down, okay, these are the 5 steps that you need to do, and make it really tangible in a process that we can do one step at a time to build that and to really feel that rhythm, so that we can build momentum and the transformation, and really birth into the new. So I so appreciate everything that you shared here today. And I understand that you actually have a new book out, which I'm sure has a
Yes.
lot of amazing new messages and other
Thank you.
ways that we can really live our best life.
Yeah, and I walk through that 5-step process in my book as well. The book is called Whispers of the Soul, and the
Mm,
story I shared with you was the impetus for that. When I leaned in and listened to that voice that was guiding me, the first whisper that came to me was that what I really wanted was to close my business, and that was a surprise. But when I really leaned, I kept coming back and asking, is that what I want? Is that what I really, really, really want? And that the yes got stronger and stronger and stronger. And then the direction I was ultimately given was to teach others how to tap into their inner wisdom, how to listen to their higher self and connect with their soul voice.
mm,
And that led me to eventually offer retreats and get my certification, life and leadership certification process, so I can guide people, and to write this book, Whispers of the Soul, and host a podcast. So all of this, the work I do now, is geared to guide people in walking this path of connection with their higher self, so that
mm,
they can find the clarity, the confidence, the courage, the joy of stepping into the best version of who they were created to be. And yeah, it's been a journey in itself, and I want to presence that it took about a year for me to really listen, to find the courage to listen, because it's a big bold vision, and I had that, who am I to do that, that inner critic that sits on one side, where the voice of wisdom is on the other side, trying to um, propel you down your unique and powerful path of true great potential. So it took a while. It really took a while, and I think it's important to recognize that, on our own journeys, that it's a process. a step by step journey to the next thing. Everything is one little baby step to the next thing that will lead you to the best version of you. If you don't mind, I just want to backtrack a wee bit. The being in nature, you mentioned both of us being in British Columbia, and I think our your listeners may recognize that we are surrounded by nature, and it's easy for us to step out and be in nature. And I think it's important that that doesn't become a barrier for you if you're somewhere in like a big major city. I lived in Porto, Portugal, last year, and it was it's a big major city, and yet I still found ways to connect with nature by just going for a walk in my neighborhood. So you don't need to have a forest in your backyard to practice this. You just need to step outside and go for a walk in your neighborhood, or go find a park, or even sit in your back garden with a cup of tea and take in your environment there, or on your patio, or what have you. It's really about unplugging from the busyness of life and tuning into a natural environment, wherever that natural environment is. And I think you and I are deeply blessed that we've got such a rich natural environment literally out our doors. And yet you can still benefit from this practice by if you're living in a big city.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've been in places too where, it's kind of dark and dreary and in the city, and not like what I experienced in BC at all. And bringing in, plants, and
Yeah.
having like a water fountain, or I have a aromatherapy diffuser. So bringing the essential oils, so there's plant medicine,
Mhm.
diffusing, and, bringing the elements of the candle for the fire,
Right.
finding ways of, still connecting, or even having pictures around you, or, there's like different videos and screens and channels you can put on your computer to have a fireplace, for example, even
Yeah.
the crackling fire. And yeah, just bringing that in some way, and then tuning into your own nature, and as you mentioned, the voice on either side of you, and also the voice within our heart. And this whole book that you've written about the whispers of the soul, really tuning into that, I think, is so profound. And we're
Mm.
going to have links to how people can connect with you. I loved being on your podcast, so we'll have the link
Yeah.
there too, where I got to talk about soul care. So, more about that, as well as a guide that I offer on soul care and living with passion and purpose. All of these things are for you, available, because we always love to provide support and resources. You'll find that in the video description below. And then, what is the website that you have, or a way of people actually connecting with you, perhaps one on one, or just exploring other services and such that you have?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Jennifer. The best way to reach me is through my website, and that's joyfulinspiredliving.com. And if you go there, there's a pop-up that appears right away that invites you to sign up for the newsletter, and you'll receive a free download of my 3 guiding principles to creating a life of clarity, confidence, courage. So, sign up for that. There's a lot of the stuff that I shared today in that, and a number of other tips and guiding practices that will help you in finding that clarity and that confidence to connect with your higher self and follow the whispers of your soul.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, and all of that's accessible down below. Anita, it's been such a joy and a pleasure having you here,
Yeah.
fellow soul
Thank
sister.
you.
And I'm curious whether there's any whispers in your soul, something else that wants to still be shared.
I th- well, my key message is just simply to get out into nature, and we didn't touch on this, but I think it's some important too. One of the most beautiful benefits of being in nature is that it helps you fall in love with yourself.
Mm.
And love is truly the answer to so much. I know that sounds so cliche to say, and yet there's a reason why so many people write songs about it and books about it and quote that love is the answer. Whatever the question, I think Wayne Dyer said this, whatever the question, love is the answer. And when you
Mm.
learn to really love yourself deeply, you become unshakable. And time in nature with yourself learning to be with yourself is the key to finding that deep, deep love.
Mm. Gorgeous. Thank you so much, Anita. And thank you to each and every one of you that tune in today or in other episodes every week. We feature a new speaker from all around the world to support you on your healing journey of self realization. So I'm really grateful that you're here. Anita, I'm so grateful that you've been here joining us. Thanks.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Thank you. We'll see you again next time on Awaken and Ascend. Bye for now.